Hello everyone, and welcome to another Liverpool Transfer Show on Football Tour Podcast. My name's Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. The same day seemed a bit quiet when it came to transfer rumors and speculation, but in the last hour or so, we've been receiving some level of bombers, I guess, which we'll speak about later in the show. But we'll start with the first story, and that is Benjamin Sesko, not really a Liverpool target or anything under that sort of nature, but it's definitely been a talking point because it could have an impact on one of our primary transfer targets. So let me present the tweet that came about this morning, and then we can see, if there's any truth to what we're hearing. Because at one point, it felt like it was uh, Newcastle that were on the verge of signing their prime target, but now it looks like it could be, it could be a complete U-turn where this is what Fabrizio Romano tweeted earlier on today. So he says, understand Manchester United's feeling from earlier today is even stronger tonight. The club believes Benjamin Sesko only wants to join Manchester United. Manchester United forward official contract proposal to Sesko while also keep negotiating with Red Bull Leipzig. Now, I've spoken about this story for the last 2 3 days. The original rumor was actually Manchester United that they were very strong in the pursuit to try and sign Benjamin Sesko. It's no secret that they've been trying to sign a striker in this window, but I sort of thought it's not the right move for him. Would it make sense for him to go to a club like Newcastle, where they're currently in the Champions League, but they're a team that's on the up. They've got a great foundation as a squad. They've got a good coach in Eddie Howe. Wouldn't it make sense to go to a club where things are actually, progressing rather than at Manchester United, where they are the sleeping giant, I guess, to an extent, but they haven't been anywhere near forget successful. They're not even been, in contention to win trophies in a number of years now. So, I know Manchester United still has that global appeal in terms of the brand and the club due to their history in terms of successes and all that sort of stuff. But it's been a long time since they've been a successful team. So I was quite surprised that he was swaying towards that move to United. But then yesterday we felt like he was going to Newcastle, and today it's back to United being the primary destination for the striker. So it's been a bit of a merry-go-round. Uh, what will happen? I'm not entirely sure because we're hearing different news is on a different day. From a football point of view, it makes the most sense to go to Newcastle, and I'm not just saying because I want a certain player to come our way. I think it's the project that appeals the most. I would say from if you're thinking about first team football and playing for a club that will be challenging, but also they're playing at the highest level, which is the Champions League and all that sort of stuff. Um, but you know, based on what we're hearing right now, the money offered could sway Benjamin Sesko's decision, and maybe the appeal to Manchester United is still a strong one for the striker. So we'll soon find out, where he goes. But the quick big question is, does that affect our sort of hopes of signing Isak? Now, a lot of fans I've seen online are feeling quite nervous. They're even feeling defeated that we won't sign him, and have pretty much thrown that white towel in the ring. Call me optimistic, but I still believe that we will sign Isak this window. I don't think the deal has quite a direct alignment to us signing Isak. What it will do is, of course, if Newcastle miss out on their primary target, then it delays our process to get that deal done. But I hope Liverpool, I feel like we've been. I've used this term a couple of times on recent shows. We're acting like the big brother right now for Newcastle, where little bro is not really, doing what he's been told, and we're just, looking out for him and keeping him away from getting told off from the parents. Right now, it needs to be a completely different angle. We have to tell little bro and tell the Newcastle that look, if you don't find your replacement in the next week or so, we're going to have to make that official bid. That we've already spoken in the background that you would be willing to accept, and we have to make it public because right now, it's early August, but we don't have too much time. We've got a few weeks left. I would have wanted this ESAT deal to be wrapped up uh, by the end of this week. That would have been my vision. Hopefully, we get him over the line and that he's in contention to start on the first day of the season. But only time will tell. I'm sure we'll get some developments in the coming days. But yeah, in terms of the Sesko deal, it might be a slight, dampener in terms of us getting the deal done quickly. But we'll soon find out. What will be the next step. Once we get some sort of official confirmation that Sesko is going to United, then we know Newcastle have a lot of work to do. But they've been linked with so many strikers, so you never know. They've been linked with the likes of Watkins, Nicholas Jackson, Wissa, who I expect them to sign. He'll probably be second choice in that sort of pecking order at the club. So who knows? If it isn't Sesko, who will be the next person? Hopefully, it'll be one of the names that I mentioned, so Liverpool can quickly get a deal over the line for Alexander Isak. So only time will tell. Now, moving on to the next player, and that is, of course, Alexander Isak. So the latest that we've heard in regards to a potential move to Liverpool is that we know his agent was in attendance in the Bilbao match, or should I say matches, because there was two matches played yesterday at Anfield last night. Apparently, he's trained with the club. Not sure if it's with the full squad or alone. Apparently, he's changed his profile picture on Instagram. So make that what you will. People are saying that's due to frustration. I don't really look into it too deep, but I thought I'd still present it to you guys. But we did get some sort of development online today. So the latest development came from Dave OC Cop. So he pretty much said that Liverpool want a quick resolution for Alexander Isak so they can move on to other targets. Liverpool targeting centre back after Isak. Isak is expected to formally tell Newcastle he wants to leave this week. And just before we went live today, Indy produced another bomber. He's definitely been very prolific, I guess, in this summer window where he's been getting a lot of the breaking news. So this is his exclusive. So he's written transfer request and personal terms agreed. Alexander Isak is ready to submit an official transfer request to leave Newcastle United and join Liverpool FC. Our sources reporting that Alexander Isak has already agreed on personal terms with the Reds, signaling a strong desire to make this move happen. Meanwhile, Newcastle is not sitting idle. They're preparing bids for other targets as they look to secure a new striker, especially with the Sesko transfer on the brink. So that makes all sense to me because I think we have had discussions with Isak and his camp, prior to the current situation. I think, privately terms have probably been agreed in the back. But Isak will need to do the next step. He will need to present a formal transfer request because right now things aren't sort of moving for us. I think privately the clubs have agreed a deal, but in order for Liverpool to make it official to the world, that might have to be a stance that the player needs to make in order to speed up the process. Right now, I feel like it's just dragging, and I feel like we will get the deal done, but it could be a thing where maybe it's not finalized this window and we have to wait for the next window, which I don't want it to be. I want it to be where we actually get the play over the line uh, as soon as possible so we can focus on this coming season. So that is the current sort of status in regards to Isak. My verdict, I've kept it quite firm. I think we'll get some sort of developments this week, even further than what India has just reported. I think we'll present an official bid and hopefully we'll get some sort of development next week. Uh, but of course, it does depend on Newcastle. Hopefully, they'll get um, a striker, whether it's Sesko or not. That's not really our concern. So what I would say to the fans that have felt a bit deflated about the Sesko news and no further updates on Isak as such, keep the hope alive. We will sign gunman Isak before the window closes. Now, on to the next rumor, and in the tweet that I mentioned earlier on regarding Dave OC Cop, he presented that Liverpool will be targeting a centre back after the Isak deal. So currently, in terms of identifying the target, we're miles apart with Crystal Palace in regards to the valuation of Mark Gay, and we're not anywhere near close to finalising a deal. So the question is, should Liverpool look at an alternative target and maybe go for Gay next summer on a free transfer? Because remember, he is on his final year. it could be a possibility, especially if Crystal Palace are being stubborn in regards to the negotiations. So if a move is not finalized by the window, they will most likely lose him on a free transfer. So you know depends what Crystal Palace want to do now, because if they want some money, they have to get a deal done in the next coming weeks. So I would have preferred, in my sort of world, that we sign Isak in this window, and then next summer we sign an up and coming centre back who is viewed as Van Dijk's possible successor. In an ideal world, I want two centre backs right now, but I don't think the club will move like that. Uh, but if the Gay deal can't be done, I see us being strong suitors to get him next summer on a free transfer. So maybe we're doing the reverse order right now. Maybe we're getting a young up and coming centre back now, and maybe we sign Gay next summer. So one of the names that has been presented or is high on our shortlist is the young centre back on the screen there, and that is Giovanni Leoni. The Parma centre back is very much liked by Liverpool. So my thoughts on the player, I'm not going to say I've watched a lot of Parma games because I haven't, but in terms of what I've seen on YouTube, in terms of compilations, for an 18-year-old centre back, he's definitely above his years. He looks very aggressive in the tackle. Reading of the game is good as well. He likes to carry the ball, which is a positive sign and shows the confidence for a young centre back. What impressed me in terms of the compilation is his physicality. He was up against Lukaku on numerous occasions and pretty much bossed him around and bullied him in certain situations. So, Lukaku, think of what you were in terms of his ability, but obviously as a human specimen, he's a big lad. So if he's able to, barge him out the way or really make sure that he's physical and dominates Lukaku either in the air or on the ground, that's a very, very positive sign. So for me, he looks like a special talent coming from Italy. And I feel like he's the right profile. And the good thing about Leone is that he's very comfortable playing as a left side centre back, but can also play on the right side. So if he was to join Liverpool this summer, for example, that would allow him to learn from Van Dijk as well as Kanate, and he can play alongside both of them during the season. That way, he'll understand, their game and then form a partnership with both defenders. But also, he'll be able to be more adaptable in years to come. Hopefully, becoming the successor or becoming one of the sort of main names in our back line. So thinking a bit far ahead, but that is a profile that we're looking at. We are looking at so the long-term success of Van Dijk. Originally, the target was Dean Howson, but of course he's moved over to Real Madrid. So we've had to, go through the data metrics and see who's the closest one out there to come into the club. And I think they earmarked Leone for next summer, but maybe due to Gay not being a possibility right now, maybe we're fast tracking this move just like we did the Ekitike deal, I think, and we're getting him a year earlier than planned. So fingers crossed we get some sort of developments. Ideally, what would be amazing if we get Leone and Mark Gay, which you can't rule out, to be honest with you. I think the fee that's reported for Leone is around 30 odd million, so maybe even a bit less. So, if we were to get Gay for about 40, 45, that's 75 million. You've pretty much secured your next two centre backs for years to come. And hopefully we can get Gnato on a new contract. And Joe Gomez still around the squad for next season. Of course, his future will definitely be discussed next summer. So that would be the perfect scenario. If that was to happen, then I'll have every confidence going into next season that we could really go for the quad, because then we've got the complete numbers and quality in terms of the centre back positions. Fullback areas we're fine. Midfield, we'll speak about later on the show. I think we're fine as well. And up front, we've got great numbers there, and I feel I've got the right quality now as well. So yeah, let's see what happens. Are we able to get one or two centre backs in? Only time will tell. Just gonna go through some of the comments before we move on. Uh, Ozan Kawak said, "Big up the man, Ozzy. Big up Ozan Kawak as always. Thank you for your comment and thank you for tuning in as always." He says, "Ozzy, we should be going in for Malik Fial. Instead, Newcastle signing him. Man is a decent cover and rotation player at centre back. I didn't realize he was going to Newcastle. He's a very good player, to be fair. I believe he was at Schalke before he joined AC Milan. very highly regarded, left-footed centre back. We played him quite recently in the pre-season friendly, and I think by far he was one of their best centre backs as well. So yeah, he would have been an interesting signing. To be fair, good profile. Um, but yeah, let's see how he develops there. But I think, yeah, if they are on the verge of signing it, it's probably because they don't have the faith in Botman, who's suffered a long-term injury, hasn't been available in recent times. So could be a good player to overtake him or even provide cover if Botman, recovers or returns to his uh full sort of capacity as well. So we'll see. But I do agree he's a good player. But maybe Liverpool have someone like Leoni in mind and maybe Gahey as well to cover for Van Dijk and Konate. So let's see, where we move in regards to the next targets. Other comments to sign Malik Fial and or Gahey, Diomande, and our defense is sorted. Um, yeah, to be fair, I do like Malik Fial. My thing in terms of centre backs, and it's funny because for the last 12, 18 months, the Liverpool fan base have always spoken about us signing a left-footed centre back. Now, I've of course, reviewed certain targets, and I thought, yeah, there's a lot of players that can fit that bill. Call me old school, call me old-fashioned. I prefer my centre backs right-footed, especially when you've got such a dominant player in Virgil van Dijk, where that left side centre back role is his position. So for me, you know, he really can't be touched. And I don't want it to be where the third choice is a left-footed player, and whenever he's called upon, Van Dijk has to move over to right. So for me, he should have a pretty much stationary position. He shouldn't have to rotate or move positions in terms of the centre back area. So that's why I think if you were to sign a player, it should be someone that's right-footed, someone like a Leoni, where he fits the profile perfectly in my eyes, where he can play left side, can play right side, and Holson was the same player as well. But obviously with Holson, he was very good with both feet, very good with left and right. So that would be the sort of target I have in mind. And I think Mark Gay as well, more than adaptable to play on the left side or right side. So for me, you've got multifunctional defenders in Leone and Gay. And I feel like that would add the right balance. If Mark Gay wasn't available and let's say Palace didn't sign Diomande could be coming as well, maybe ahead of him in that regard. So, and also I think with Leone, if he was to sign, we don't have to register him as a non-homegrown player because you have to do it within a certain age group. So if he's under 20 or under 21, he doesn't need to be registered. So that could be a smart signing from Liverpool where we get another body through the door and we don't really have to think about his registration as such. So who knows? I feel like the plan is to get Gahey or or sort of an experienced defender plus a young and up and coming one. Well, of course, we miss out on Housen, so maybe Leone is that guy. And from my recollection, we've never really had an Italian centre back in the team, have we? I know we had Paletta, but Paletta was an Argentine player at the time. He was playing for the youth teams when he joined Liverpool, but when he left and moved over to Italy, apparently he discovered that he had some sort of Italian connection there, and then switched alliances when he was in Serie A. So it would be nice to have a Italian centre back. They're always renowned to be, tough tackling centre backs. But yeah, it wasn't. It's not something I can't remember that we've had over the years. So yeah, maybe we'll have the next, big thing from Italy in Giovanni Leoni. So let's see if there's any truth to the rumor. Ozan Kabak says, "I don't care about the quad Aussie. Just give me the UCL and Premier League this season, and I'm happy." I agree, but because we're completing, or in my eyes, we're building such a complete squad. I'm thinking way far ahead, and for me, it's like this is the first time where I feel like we're on the verge of having such a complete squad, and it's not just a complete squad in terms of numbers; the quality is there as well. Our second team can rival most teams in Europe, in my opinion. So that's why I feel like he's the one that, or should I say, Leone could be the one that gets added to the squad as well as Gahey, and then we pretty much wrapped it all up. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Other question was Sebastian Coates. So Coates was Uruguayan. So he's a Uruguayan international. So I think he's made over 30, 40 caps for them over the years. So yeah, so he's of Uruguayan nationality. So yeah, Paletta was the one that came as an Argentine youth player, but when he left and moved over to Italy, he switched alliances at the time. Uh, all I recall is him scoring that banger at QPR. Funny enough, with uh, I think he scored a bicycle kick. Yeah, Paletta. I think both these centre backs scored bicycle kicks. Uh, Either in the Liverpool quiz or before they came as well. 'Cause remember when we used to get linked with players, they'll show you their highlight reels, and I think they both scored acrobatic efforts in their careers for their previous clubs. I think Paletta came from Banfield. I'm not sure where Quarters, maybe Independiente. I'm not 100% sure, but he of course came from South America. So yeah, two defenders, that had a lot of promise, but fortunately never lived up to it. So yeah, a little blast from the past there in terms of centre back options. Another player to discuss is Federico Chiesa. Now, he's been linked with so many moves, in the last few weeks. We've heard the names, things like AC Milan, Juventus, Napoli, I've been even Inter Milan, Atalanta. Almost so all the Italian teams that you can think of, they've pretty much been linked with Federico Chiesa. But despite these sort of conflicting reports, it now appears that he could be staying at Liverpool and fight for his place and provide vital cover for Arnold Slot's side, especially with the departure of Luis Diaz. So my thoughts on that, it makes a lot of sense to keep him on board, in my opinion. I've always said this. I always feel like it can't be both Elliot and Chiesa that leave. It has to be one or the other. And I say that because if we sell both, we're just declining the numbers of cover for our attackers. So it's not something I feel like we need to do at this stage. So I feel like with Chiesa, he might not have got as many game times in terms of last season, but he's definitely a player that has a lot of quality. He might not be prime time Chiesa of a few years ago, but I feel like with his experience and his know-how, he's definitely a viable option for us off the bench or in squad rotation during the season. So I feel like it would be worth having him for at least one more season. And it's not like we're going to get a crazy bid for him. It'll probably match whatever the money we paid last year. So why not keep him for a year? I feel like he would be a very good option for us off the bench. And also, if you believe the rumors in terms of Leoni being a possible target, maybe having another Italian member in the squad can help the young centre back Leoni settle at Liverpool very quickly. So you got to think about these little things. Also, if there's any truth to Leoni coming over to Liverpool, might as well keep Chiesa on board. He can be Uncle Federico to him and just look after him and make sure he's ready to settle in and can of course have an impact in the squad. So uh, yeah, we'll see in terms of Chiesa. I feel like he'll end up staying now because there's strong rumors surrounding Harvey Elliott that he could be on the move. And I think there were a couple of tweets today that occurred before we started the show. So one came from David Ornstein. So Red Bull Leipzig speaking to Liverpool about possible move for Harvey Elliott. Situation at early stage, but Red Bull Leipzig exploring and clubs talking. Sorry, and it's a 22-year-old midfielder seen as a potential replacement for Xavi Simons. So not sound like I'm ahead of the game in terms of journalists, but I spoke about that a couple of days ago that he could be a potential target for Leipzig as they need a replacement for Simons. And there was a further update as well from Germany in terms of Florian Plettenberg. So he said Harvey Elliott is very high on Red Bull Leipzig's shortlist, as revealed days ago in our show. Several clubs are interested in the 22-year-old Liverpool midfielder, but Leverkusen, oh, should I say, Leipzig are pushing now. Clubs in contact. Elia has already spoken with Ole Werner and Marcel Schaffer as per transfer market. I'm sure he's spoken to Uncle Jurgen as well, if we're going to stick to the uncle theme in the show today. Um, Now, my thoughts on him moving over to the Bundesliga, I think it's a good move. It will just depend, if he wants to make that step there, because not every player wants to, you know, play in a different league or in a sort of a different environment or go over somewhere where he has to learn a new language. It doesn't appeal to everyone. So if he's on board, to move over there and experience a new way of playing football, a new sort of league, and complete new lifestyle altogether, then I feel like it's definitely a good move for him. In terms of from a footballing point of view, I feel like his skill set will be very well matched in the Bundesliga. They don't play in a ferocious kind of pace like we do in the Premier League, but it is still a very strong league, full of technical players. So I feel like he could have a real impact in the Bundesliga. So it could be a good move. My only stumbling block could be how much are they willing to offer, because there's been no sort of financial quotes in terms of the transfer fees. It hasn't been revealed. I haven't seen it anywhere online. If anyone else has, please let me know in the chat. But we were looking to sell him at one point for 40, 50 million pounds. So it needs to be close to that range. For me, I wouldn't accept less than 40. I think that is his valuation. So for me, if Leipzig are willing to spend that kind of money, then maybe that is where the money will come from. Of course, in terms of Simons, they'll use that money for that deal. Not sure how much he's going for, but I'm sure he'll be going for a lot more than 40, 50 million. So maybe in that case, they reinvest into um Harvey and then get him on board and still have better change left as well, or maybe to sign another player. So for me, it's a good option for him. I think a move to the Bundesliga will suit his skill set, but it's based on his desire. Does he want to move to a different country? Is he willing to do that? Or would he rather stay in the Premier League? Because he does have interest from Premier League clubs. West Ham have shown some strong interest in the last few days. Wolves have in the past as well. So maybe there's a potential um, move for him to remain in the league. Tottenham, as I forgot to mention as well, they've been strong in their pursuit as well. So only time will tell. I think these are preliminary talks with Leipzig. So if any of the Premier League teams are interested, they're going to have to bid at least 40, 50 million to get our attention. So we'll see. I think there will be some developments in the story. If it is to Leipzig, I do think it's a good move for the Liverpool midfielder. Now, on to the next rumor, and it's Darwin Nunes again. Um, so the current speculation is coming from AC Milan. So they are expected to make an offer for Darwin Nunes this week if they feel a deal can be done with Liverpool. Al Hilal, of course, they have registered their interest. Uh, the only stumbling block for me is that the Italian side want to sign Nunes on loan with an obligation to buy. For me, that's not an ideal scenario. It would be the only scenario if they were the only club that was showing us interest, but because we know there's interest from Saudis, teams like Al Hilal, Al Nassr, and Al Ahly as well. Those were the three teams that have shown interest in signing the Uruguayan striker. So for me, if Milan aren't willing to spend right now, I wouldn't even show them any attention. I'll be like, look, we're in talks with Saudi teams right now. So if you want the player, you've got to place, a bid that you're thinking of doing 12 months down the line. Why not do it now? Because if you really want the player, you're going to have to, show your sort of upper hand in terms of your financial power and bring that money to the table. For me, if Saudi are, really serious about signing the striker, especially Al Hilal, then I think we need to try and continue our talks with them and try and get that deal over the line. Because for me, um, with Italian teams, they don't spend big. We just found that out a few weeks ago with Napoli. We thought they were willing to spend around 40, 50 million pounds, mainly 50, I would say, because they did have the funds, with the sale for Askelia in January, but they, went to another option, a cheap option, where I think it's on loan plus an obligation of 22 million euros for their striker. So yeah, Italian teams will be sort of tricky people to negotiate with, or should I say teams to negotiate with. If they're serious, continue the discussions. If not, we'll just say, look, unfortunately, the loan move is not what we want, and the Saudi teams are willing to pay cash up front right now. So let's see what happens. It will probably come down to what Darwin Núñez wants. Maybe he's pushing for that move to Milan, which of course makes sense because they're such an established club. But at the same time, the Saudi, money, that should be talking to him as well because, that's his retirement fund, and his family's future secured, by that move alone. So we'll see, what happens in regards to Darwin Núñez. But I expect him to leave. Um, that's almost a guarantee, if I'm being honest. Uh, or like I said, Uncle Federico, yeah, you gotta be respectful to your elders, isn't it? So Leone will come in and yeah, hopefully he'll settle in very well at the club. Now on to other news. So it's official. Tyler Morton has officially signed with Lyon for £15 million. Now my thoughts on the deal. That price range was definitely quoted last week, but then I saw reports saying that it was about 8 million. So I was really disappointed by that. But I'm glad to hear that it is 15 million. I think it is a good bit of business. I probably would have been a bit greedy and asked for 20 because I believe we rejected a bid last year from Leverkusen of that same range for Morton. But I think it's a good deal. They seem to be very happy about the deal. They I saw on a video today where they unveiled a player saying that you'll never walk alone here or something along those lines. And they had all these players coming up to him. I think they were speaking in their own languages, depending on their nationality, pretty much saying you'll never walk alone. So nice little touch there from the players at Leon. But I think it's a good move for him. He'll be playing Liga, where it is a good league, despite what fans will tell you it's a farmers league. Just because PSG win all the time doesn't mean it's a farmers league. But if you look at the players there, it's full of young and up and coming talent. And Tyler Morton's still a young player that still, is learning, still developing. So it's a great move for him for his career. And who knows, if he continues to perform, he could find himself, returning to the Premier League in the future. I think he's got all the technical ability to do really well in League One. So I wish him all the best. He's never really shown any sort of attitude about being a bit part player or anything like that. And he's been at the club since I think he was 6, 7 years old. So he's been part of the Liverpool squad or the academies as well for a long, long time. So yeah, I think he deserves this move. Of course, it's very difficult to break in that Liverpool midfield. So I think he was, smart enough to realize that, maybe I'm not going to get a lot of game time here, and decide to, pursue other ventures. And it looks like he's settled for a club in Lyon, who, let's be honest, I know despite their financial issues, they're still regarded as a big team in France. So I think it's a great team that he's joined in. So yeah, wish him all the best, and hopefully he does well next season. And that puts me towards the next player in terms of Trenioni. So it appears that with Morton's departure, Trenioni gets an instant promotion to the first team squad. So my question is that the right call or is that too soon? I don't think it's too soon, to be honest with you. There's definitely a vacant space with Morton leaving now. I also feel like in terms of options, we're very blessed in terms of that double pivot role. We've got the likes of Gravenberch, McAllister. Now we probably have to add Sabozlai in that mix because he's been fantastic in that role in the last couple of weeks in pre-season. And then you've also got Endo, you've got Curtis Jones, you've got Bajtic. We haven't seen action yet, but he's in the squad right now, and you've got James McConnell. So seven options there, plus Trenioni. So a lot of names that can definitely cover those two positions in midfield, but also the likes of suppose like Curtis Jones, they can play a bit more further up as a number 10, and even McAllister to an extent. So for me, this is a good sort of blend where you've got experience plus youth in your midfield. So you've got Groundberg, McAllister, Szoboszlai, Curtis Jones, and Endo. So five strong midfielders that will definitely be in rotation for that double pivot role. But then you've got young players like Bajtic, McConnell, and Trenioni. Now I think either Bajtic or McConnell will probably end up leaving, so it'll be one less option. But I still feel like that's an adequate number for us to utilize the squad, and I feel like we've got a lot of strength and depth within that sort of double pivot midfield positions there. So for me, I think it's warranted, but at the same time, because he's not sort of high in the pecking order, I think it's important to realize that you know he might not make the match day squads all the time because there'll be other experienced players or players that are better him right now, ahead of him in that order. So for me, if he's not available in the squad, I would like him to play for the under 23s as well as being part of the first team squad training. That way, he's learning his trade for the under 23s where, he's playing regular football. But at the same time, once he's played a match day, he can come over to the first team squad and train with the senior players as well. of course, with our current setup at AXA, both youth players and the under 23s and the local first team, they all train in the same sort of proximity. So they are going to, it's easy just to move around and, join the other session when you're doing one session for one team at the stage. So for me, it's a good sort of scenario where Trey gets to play games for the under 23s, but also whenever called upon, whenever needed, he is available for the first team squad. So I think that is definitely warranted because he's shown great promise whenever he's put on a Liverpool shirt. And I'm talking from last season and preseason as well. So yeah, for me, he's a great option. He's got the similar sort of skill set to a Gravenberg, in my opinion. So he's a great option in the midfield. He's actually played a bit more further up in his younger days. I say younger days, only 16, 17, 18 years of age. But in terms of when he was at Leicester City, he played as a number 10, more so than not. So for me, he's a good athlete, he's a good option to have. But at the same time, we're not putting too much pressure on him. He's not the first 4 or 5 midfielders in our order. He's seven, eight, in that kind of range. So for me, that shows that he's close to being in the first team squad, but at the same time, he's not under the pressure to deliver whenever called upon. So for me, it's a good transition for him to be ready for the first team in the future. And I feel like because of his great performance in preseason, it's only right that we give him that pathway to enter the first team squad in the coming season. And same question has to be presented for Rio and Gamora. Like, what does it mean for him? Should he be promoted in the same way like Trey Leoni is to the first team? I would probably say yes. Um, but I'm going to continue with my stance that I've spoken about Rio for a number of days and weeks. I feel like we've got to be very careful, Rio. So for me, on paper, I would label him as a sixth choice attacker. But because he's sixth choice, he will unlikely make the matchday squad on a weekly basis. So therefore, if we feel like he's not the right option for us to have, then he will be playing for the under 23s alongside Trey Leoni. So both players, will be training with the under 23s, playing their games, and then they will be, available for first team training with our current squad as well. So I feel like they'll be, going through different training drills here and there, but it's going to help with their development. And also, if we feel like it's too much for the players, they're playing too many games, or we're putting too much attention or pressure on them, then we have to just let them play under 23s and let them focus on that solely, and then maybe in the second part of the season we push them into playing around this first team or at least playing cup games this season. So for me, on paper, let's say Isak is through the door. It would be Salah, Isak, Ekatike, Gakpo, Chiesa. So that's 5 players there, and add Rio. So that's 6 players. So for me, he would be the sixth attacker. I expect Harvey Elliott to leave and possibly join Red Bull Leipzig. That seems to be the front runner right now. And I expect Ben Dog to be sold as well. If Ben Dog isn't sold, then maybe he's an option. But then that'll put Rio down to seventh place in sort of the pecking order there. So for me, um, I think sixth choice is about right because it still shows in that look, you're not just a young prospect. We actually value you very, very highly. We just want you to sort of learn your trade, take your time, and naturally, when we feel like you're ready, you'll be part of the squad in this coming season because he will get game time. So I feel like Liverpool in a very, good position here where they can try and promote these two youngsters, but not put too much pressure or too much limelight on these players when they're in the squad. So for me, same kind of scenario for Rio and Trey. I think they will be around the first team, but not heavily used or heavily focused in the next season. So nonetheless, very, very exciting times for us Liverpool fans. Just got a comment here from Olan Kabak who says, Ozzy, do you see a scenario where we lose the full fours and don't sign Isak? Diogo, rest in peace. Lucho, uh, Darwin, Uncle Fede, Harvey. This would leave us severely weakened, right? Let me just have a sip of water and I would, yeah, definitely. I think that's a very big point there because, it's all good and well selling these players and raising the funds. But I feel like we have to have a plan. You can't just sell players to raise money for the sake of it, right? So in terms of the names you've listed, I've always said it has to be one or the other between Javier and Chiesa. And right now, it appears that Chiesa will be the one that stays. Um, if for some reason they both leave, then we can't sell Ben Doak. So let's put him in the mix. Between those three, I think one of them has to stay. And they won't be six, they will be fifth choice attackers in my eyes. So if we don't sign Isak, wow, that's an interesting one because you're gonna laugh. If we don't sign Isak, we may have to keep Nunes for another year. You know, some fans will like it, some like myself won't. Uh, but it might have to be a reality where we keep Nunes for another season and let Ekitike be the main striker in our team because we're not going to just sign anyone in the market right now. Let's be honest, there aren't many strikers out there. So for me, if Isak doesn't come through the door, it could mean Darwin stays for another year. And that's probably why, that move hasn't accelerated right now. Once we get clarity in terms of, an official bid from Liverpool and, Isak's coming through, that's when Darwin Nunes will be, heading out of the door. So you're right. We can't just sell these players. I feel like Elliot, I thought for one moment Elliot might stay. But I'll be honest with you, as much as I rate the player, once I've watched the games in preseason in the last couple of weeks, he's not on the same wavelength. And when I say he's not on the same wavelength, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just, saying it how I see it. Um, he's not on the same level as the players around him. We've got Florian Wirtz, who's by far one of the best number 10s in world football. There was one game where he produced a inch perfect pass to Elliot, and Elliot just didn't have the acceleration to even get the ball. So because he's not dynamic, he's not, quick off the mark or doesn't have that burst of speed. Unfortunately, that is a disadvantage, especially when you're playing in a team like Liverpool, where every player around us is quick and dynamic. They play with more of a free spirit. They're a bit more interchangeable during transitions. So for me, he doesn't quite have that sort of that athleticism. He's not as dynamic as the others around him. So unfortunately, that's a bit of a negative, and that's why I feel like a move to Leipzig in the Bundesliga, where the game is played at a slower pace, might actually suit his skill set. Same scenario as Darwin Nunes. I feel like him playing in a different league, where it's a little bit slower in comparison to the Premier League, will suit his skill set as well. So these are not bad players. It's just players that are not sort of in line with what the manager wants or what the coach wants, and that is to play a certain brand of football. Right now, we've got a great mix, and that's why I feel like players like Rio, who we've got on the screen right now. I know he's young, but he fits the mold in terms of what we want from our attacker. He's quick, he's dynamic, he's direct, he's fearless. So, that's what we want in our team. So for me, it's better to promote these type of players rather than overuse certain players where, let's be honest, they weren't favoured by Onslaught. So therefore, the best situation would be to allow those players to move on and play first in football elsewhere and progress within their career. Um, so I feel like with Federico Chiesa, we'll have a player that can play in multiple positions, but will be that experienced player whenever called upon. So I feel like he'll be a decent option for us. And then in terms of Lucha, for Lucha's gone, Diogo unfortunately passed away. Um, so yeah, if we don't get Isak, it's a bit of a bummer. I'm not gonna lie. It will probably mean Nunes stays for another season, which yeah, I can see. Yeah, yeah, for me, yeah, it's not the scenario that I want to hear. And then of course, that's the only scenario where Ozzy wants to keep that. It probably is, if I'm being honest with you, because actually, nah, let me not be. I was gonna give another scenario there where we even if we sell Nunes, Chiesa could be the striker or the backup striker to Ekitike, and then we save Ben Doak, which actually doesn't sound too wild when I say it out loud, but no, in that case it might be where Darwin Nunes is, but I don't know because it feels like Arsenal. has made a decision about Darwin Núñez as well as Elliot, and he wants them to leave. So, um, but if Darwin Núñez leaves and Isak doesn't come, then we don't sell Ben Doak. We have to keep him as an option for that right hand side. Chiesa ends up becoming the backup striker for Ekitike, which, if you look at preseason, might be his position because he hasn't played on the wide. Well, I think he played left on one game, but he's predominantly played as a striker. So maybe it looks like Darwin is out the door. But I'm trying to give him a bit of benefit of the doubt that that would be the only scenario that we keep him. But even in that scenario, I feel like we could dispel him in that matter. So you think I'd really want him at the club? It's not that. I just feel like we've moved on and we've tried to, evolve with new players in the team. That's why, I'm very impressed and excited about the prospects of Ekitike and also seeing how Florian Wirtz is in the team. So for me, it's going to be very, very interesting to know how we play because right now, what we saw against Bilbao in the second game yesterday was enticing stuff. Like I refer that champagne football. Like we were playing with such speed and such sort of dynamic levels. Like it was a joy to watch. And this was a friendly game. It wasn't even like we were playing full flow. So yeah, we'll see where Darwin Núñez fits, but I expect him to depart in any scenario. To be honest with you, Nick finally said yes, yes, and he said people seem to not to have learned that going to United will sink them. I don't know what's going on, Nick. People just haven't got the memo, have they? United is not the club to go to. I'm not saying that because we're Liverpool fans and United are our nearest rivals in terms of history, not currently. Um, yeah, it's just the money. I think the money talks to these players. They feel like it's a club where I don't know, maybe it's a sleeping giant. They're going to wake up all of a sudden. They're really not, and I don't mean to like put down onto United fans, but it's not going to happen overnight. There is a lot of work in that club, in that squad. So, Sesko going there, he doesn't solve any problems, in my opinion. And I've said it about Sesko because he has been a striker that we've been linked with. And I've said it before, he's not the guy. He's very raw. He's got a lot of work to do, a lot of, his tools need refining. He's he's not the finisher that people assume. Whenever I've seen him play live, and I've seen him play for Slovenia, I've seen him play for Red Bull Leipzig, he's not it. He really, I don't know if I give him bad luck or whatnot, but whenever I've seen him play, I've been very, very unimpressed with what he's produced on the pitch. So, it's easy to pull out his best goals, but throughout the season, what kind of chances is missing? For me, he's still a raw finisher. So, you know, kind of like when we had Darwin that came through the door, even though Darwin, when he joined us, he was very prolific in Benfica the season before. But I think that was just a purple patch season for him. So for me, I don't think he improves United. He's probably the popular or the trendy name right now in terms of the strikers available. Because let's be honest, there aren't many out there that you'll break the bank for. So United have explored the market and thought he's the best one available, and for me, he was never a viable option. I had plenty of names above him before even going down the list. So for me, I'm pleased that Ekitike is the one that we got ahead of him, and fingers crossed, Isak is the one that comes through the door as well. So let's see what happens with United. It looks like, and it's funny. So some of the angles I'm seeing is that United are only bidding for Sesko because they don't want Liverpool to get Isak, so we're trying to ruin the party. Listen, we shouldn't you shouldn't be thinking about Liverpool, honestly. Think about yourselves. You need a striker, so that's your main focus. I've been trying to get rid of Hoyland like a bad rash, like they can't get rid of him. So they're doing all they can to try and add more firepower to the squad, but they're not learning from their previous lessons, which is you don't sign young strikers and then have another young striker in competition with that striker. They will have Hoyland, Sesko, and what's his name, Zertsky. Those three strikers, they're all young. They're all not anywhere near their sort of highest capability. The goal was to sign an experienced and established striker. i.e., a Eucharist or an Osimhen, that kind of caliber of a striker. But they missed the trick. That's why for me, United don't know how to operate. They don't sort of have a strategy. They don't analyze the profile players that they need. It's all good about signing players that had a good season, but are they the right players for you? I don't think so. I think Mbromo, very intrigued to see how he does because he predominantly plays on the wide, but he'll be playing as a more of an inside forward, which I think he'll do well. But for me, it depends who the striker. If it's Sesko, then I don't know. I think S- I think Mbromo and Cunha will get the goals, but Sesko, he won't be as lethal as people think he is. So who knows? Let's see what happens in this scenario. I feel like with Sesko, the best fit, and I'm not just saying it for the sake of it because we want Isak, is actually Newcastle. Newcastle play with out and out wingers. They don't play with inside forwards. Play with out and out wingers, and they're the ones that bomb crosses inside the box, and that suits Sesko in terms of his skill. So being a tall striker who likes to head, but also he's um got a decent touch around the box. His finishing is a bit erratic, but playing for a team like Newcastle, where he'll be given a lot of chances and opportunities to excel, it's the place to be for him. But you know, that's not how football works. Logic isn't always someone's forefront in terms of their thinking. So I think he'll probably end up at United, which doesn't help us. But I think the best move would be Newcastle for his career. So we'll only see what happens with Sesko. Double D, big up Double D as always. He says, I concur about Sesko. Big up yourself. Thank you for your comment. Oza Kabak says, Sesko going to Scum United would be career suicide. It would be, but sometimes, people are blinded by the money. And that's what I feel like it is. It all comes down to the buy that's been presented on the table because that's all he's thinking about. And you're 100% right. It's the cemetery, football cemetery for me because they kill careers. Honestly, like I kid you not, Zelensky was a player of very high promise before he came. I watched him a couple of times for Bologna because they had a great season for Serie A, and he looked like a decent player. Honestly, he really did. He's come over to United, looks an absolute shadow of himself. And they had Hoyland as well. Honestly, because I've got family from Denmark, so I always keep an eye on Danish football. And Hoyland was banging the goals for the national team. Comes to United, like he's gone completely left. So they know how to kill careers. They really do. So Sesko might be joining that very long list right now. But it's his choice. He's got two clubs that, ironically, he's accepted terms or agreed terms with both. So it comes down to what his decision is. What does he want to do? Um, if Uncle Jurgen's on the phone to him, he'll probably tell him to go Newcastle because, from a footballing point of view, it makes the most sense. And of course, slightly helps us with the Isak deal. But um, yeah, for me, it's one of those ones where I don't think he's gonna make the logical choice. If I'm going to present a prediction, I think yeah, I think he's going to choose United. So yeah, let me know what you think in the chat, guys. Do you think he'll choose United, or will he choose Newcastle? Because at one point it looked like he was going over there, but I don't know. Look, this he's agreed terms with both clubs. That's the news we're getting right now. So yeah, not really. Not a serious guy, but we'll see where he ends up. Ozzy says you've got family in Denmark. Who is your Danish club then, Ozzy? So my in-laws, so my missus, her family's from Denmark. She's Danish as well. So do I have a Danish team? I don't, to be fair. I just look out for the national team just to see how they do. But I guess we played Michelin not so long ago. They seemed quite decent, and then of course you've got Copenhagen. So uh, her family's based in Copenhagen, so I'll probably have to say Copenhagen, isn't it? So yeah, so that's the team right there. But actually, funny enough, where my missus family live, they're not actually far from Bromby, which is Daniel Agger's team. So maybe I gotta say Bromby, right? Because of Liverpool affiliation there. So yeah, so that's my team. Yeah, in terms of having a Danish one. So yeah, Bromby is my Danish team because it's local to my in-laws there. So yeah, so supporting Daniel Agger. He's actually one of my favorite centre backs. not of all time, but I think my personal favorite centre back since I've been a Liverpool fan. So yeah, so that's my little little fun fact there. But that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Oz and Kabak. Thank you to Nick. Thank you to Double D. Appreciate your engagement and comments as always. Just got a comment here before we close the show. Oz and Kabak said, "Oh man, the only thing I remember Mitch is when Jurgen played Diogo. Rest in peace. When he absolutely didn't have to. Yeah, and he got injured. Yep, that was the game. You're spot on. That wasn't very ideal, was it? So yeah. So yeah, not really don't really have them in sort of my mind from as a soft spot for a Danish team. It would probably be Bromby because of Aga and my missus family, they live close to Bromby as well. So yeah, so that's my team there, I guess. Even though I have no idea who plays for them. So I know Aga, I think he owns them, or was he a head coach to them? I'm not too sure. But he definitely does have some sort of stakeholder or some sort of involvement with Bromby. So yeah, so I guess that's my team. Um, yes, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming shows, hopefully we'll get some more developments tomorrow. So we'll do our normal Liverpool transfer show wrap up around 11 p.m. time, similar to today. And yeah, hopefully we get some news regarding Liverpool. We might get some Sesko update, which might help our process to sign Isak, or we might get some further news regarding Gay possibly or Leoni. Um, so only time will tell. And yeah, just gotta sit back, relax, and see what news breaks tomorrow morning or afternoon, whenever it happens. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.